Resolutions number 297, 298, 299, and 300. Senator Tony Vargas would like us to recognize Dr. Teresa Hatcher of Omaha, Nebraska, serving as today's family physician of the day. Dr. Hatcher is with us on the north balcony. Doctor, if you can please rise, I'd like to welcome you to the Nebraska Legislature. Moving right to the agenda, legislative confirmation reports. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, the first report this morning from the Judiciary Committee is for the appointment of Gerald Henson to the Crime Victims Reparation Committee.
Senator Lathrop, you recognized to open on the confirmation report of the Judiciary Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, good morning. Gerald Rand Hansen is a reappointment to the Crime Victims Reparation Committee, who was originally appointed in 2009. His current reappointment is to serve a term from July 17, 2021 until July 16, 2025. He serves as a member of the public as the business representative on the committee. Mr. Hansen is from Omaha. He is a retired CPA who practiced for over 35 years. He was out of the country and unable to attend the hearing in person, but did submit a letter on his own behalf to the Judiciary Committee. The committee voted to advance his confirmation without any dissenting votes, and I would encourage your support of this nominee with a green vote. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Lathrop. Discussion of the report. Senator Erdman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. I am in support of this nomination, but I have an important statement to make. I was going to use a point of personal privilege, but I thought I'd use this one. Whoever painted the numbers in the parking lot, I do appreciate it. I was accused this morning of doing that, and I just want you to know that I did not do that. But if I shame somebody else into doing it, I sure appreciate it. Those numbers are nice. I can read them, and the new people will appreciate them as well. So that's part of it. The other thing I want to make sure that you understand, March 1, tomorrow, is the deadline for filing your C1 form with accountability disclosure. So if you haven't filed your form, please do so because the deadline is quickly approaching. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Senator Erdman. Any further discussion? I see none. Senator Lathrop, you recognize to close.
Thank you. I just want to tell Senator Erdman that when I rolled into the parking lot and I saw those bright lines and the bright numbers, he was the first person I thought of. I wondered if he hadn't been busy yesterday during the nice weather. And I also appreciate his public service announcement. And with that, I would encourage your support of this confirmation. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Lathrop. Question for the body is the adoption of the confirmation report from the Judiciary Committee. Those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
41 ayes, no nays on the adoption of the report.
The confirmation report has been adopted. Now the first of 5 reports from the Natural Resources Committee. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, the Natural Resources Committee would report favorably on Scott Castles to the Game and Parks Commission.
Senator Bosman, you recognize to open the report.
Good morning, Nebraska. Good morning, colleagues. Mr. President, members of the legislature, I present for your approval the reappointment of Scott Castles to the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission. Came before the committee for his confirmation hearing on February 16th. Mr. Castles is seeking reappointment for his second and final term on the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission as the at-large member. Mr. Castles currently works as a vice president of Kiewit Corporation and president of the Kiewit Infrastructure Group. His work in a leadership role transitions into his role in the commission as he serves the entirety of the state in working to improve the outdoor recreation experiences for all Nebraskans. During his time on the commission, Mr. Castles worked to care for the state's fish, wildlife park, and outdoor recreation sites in the best long-term interests of the people and those resources. Nebraska Game and Parks is governed by a board of 9 commissioners, each member of which is appointed by the governor to a 4-year term. 8 commissioners serve each of the 8 districts across the state. The 9th serves an at-large role. Commissioners serve in a volunteer capacity and meet in various locations across the state approximately every 2 months. It conducts public education programs for hunting and boating safety and also provides other resources for those who wish to learn to enjoy the outdoors. Committee advanced Mr. Castle's reappointment by an 8-0 vote. I ask for the confirmation of Scott Castles to the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission.
Thanks, Senator Bossman. Discussion on the report. Senator Urban?
Thank you again, Mr. President. I appreciate that. So this will be no shock to anyone that this is relating to game and parks. And so I need to take an opportunity to explain to you why these commissioners should not be reappointed. First and foremost, I want to say that this agency is probably the poorest managed agency of the state, or I should say it used to be until the Department of Education came to my attention. So now they're second worst. But over the years, the commissioners had an opportunity to manage this in a different way. By that, I mean, they should have appointed a director that had the best interest of those people in the state of Nebraska who pay for all the damages these wildlife make. And so they continued to have the director that they had, and they knew that the agency was going in the wrong direction. And they also knew that you can't manage something unless you can measure it, and they have no idea how many animals they have. But yet they continue to move forward as if they do know. And the commissioners knew that the agency was poorly managed and chose to do nothing. Now, they have a new director, and I've met with a new director, and I believe that Mr. McCoy, if given the chance, will make a difference. I don't know that this current body of commissioners has the ability to give him the authority to do what needs to be done. And so I think that the best procedure going forward is to replace the commissioners as they come up for reappointment. And we need to get someone appointed to this commission that actually is involved in agriculture. And I know some of them have touted the fact that they own land and they're in farming, but in agriculture, but they really don't make their livelihood from farming or agriculture. And we used to have people representing the landowners that were on the commission from my district that were very much agricultural producers, and they had a different opinion. And so I won't be voting for Mr. Castle's reappointment. And until we start making a decision where the buck stops, we won't make any changes on some of these appointments. And so I will be voting no, and I would encourage you to do the same. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Urban. Any further discussion? I see none. Senator Bossman, ways closed. In question from the body is the adoption of the first of 5 confirmation reports from the Natural Resources Committee. Those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
37 ayes, 1 nay on the adoption of the report.
Report's been adopted. Second report, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, the next report from the Natural Resources Committee is for Scott McPeters and Taylor Nelson to the Ethanol Board.
Senator Bossman.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the legislature. I present for your approval the reappointment of Scott McPeters and Taylor Nelson to the Nebraska Ethanol Board. Both came before the Natural Resources Committee for their confirmation hearing on February 10th. The Nebraska Ethanol Board is a state agency created in 1971 by the Nebraska Legislature, the first and only state agency in the United States devoted solely to the development of the ethanol industry. The board focuses on 4 key issues: ethanol production and industry support, market development, research and technology issues, and also public policy development. First, Mr. Taylor Nelson is seeking reappointment to continue to fill the position of corn industry representative for the board. In his role the last 4 years, Mr. Nelson allocated the budget for multiple projects for the board. He also helped develop statewide marketing strategies to grow demand as well as to continue supply chain development. In his appointed position, he advocates for the needs of the corn and ethanol industry. He is an active member of the Nebraska Corn Growers Association, in which he helps collaborate with other board members to form local initiatives and fundraisers. He combined his combined volunteer work with experience in the field as the Vice President of Jackson Express. Second is Mr. Scott McPeters is seeking a reappointment to his second term and will continue to serve as a business representative. His professional background includes experience on the Board of Managers for Kappa Ethanol Holdings, Board of Directors for the American Coalition for Ethanol, and as a delegate on the Nebraska Governor's Agriculture Trade Mission to China in 2016. Mr. McPeters serves his role on the board well by including innovative executive business operations and commitment to cost-effective management of resources and quality performance. There was no opposition to either of these reappointments. The committee advanced their reappointment by an 8-0 vote. I ask for the confirmation of Mr. Taylor Nelson and Scott McPeters to the Nebraska Ethanol Board.
Thank you, Senator Bossman. Any discussion? I see none. Senator Bossman waives closing. Question will advise the adoption of the second confirmation report from the Natural Resources Committee. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted? Record, please.
41 ayes, no nays on the adoption of the report.
Second confirmation report from the Natural Resources Committee has been adopted. Moving to the third report, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Natural Resources would report favorably on Bridget Troxel Peck to the Power Review Board.
Senator Bossman.
Thank you, Mr. President, and members of the legislature. I present for your approval an appointment of Bridget Troxel Peck to the Nebraska Power Review Board, who came before the committee on February 17th. Bridget Troxel Peck is coming into the Nebraska Power Review Board to serve her first term to fill the role of accountant. For the past 7 years, Mrs. Peck has been working as the Senior Vice President of Director of Audit and Risk Management at Platte Valley Companies. Her work as a financial professional has given her the ability to drive results across a large organization and organize complex business problems for resolution. Bridget Troxel Peck has previous experience auditing public accounting for industries, and one area she found particularly interesting was public power. Combining her interests with a belief in the duty to give back to her community, Mrs. Peck is excited to begin her first term serving on the Nebraska Power Review Board. The Nebraska Power Review Board is comprised of 5 members, all appointed by the governor. The board must include an engineer, an attorney, an accountant, and 2 laypersons with no geographic boundary restrictions. The Nebraska Power Review Board is a state agency created in 1963 to regulate Nebraska's public-owned electric utility industry. As we know, Nebraska is the only state in the country served entirely by consumer-owned power entities. These utilities include public power districts, cooperatives, and municipalities. The board's duties and responsibilities are set out in Chapter 70, Article 10 of the Nebraska Revised Statutes. The committee advanced Mrs. Peck's appointment 7-0 unanimously. There was no opposition, and I ask for your confirmation of Bridget Troxel Peck to the Nebraska Power Review Board.
Thanks, Senator Bossman. Any discussion? I see none. Senator Bossman waives closing. Question of the body is the adoption of the third confirmation report from the Natural Resources Committee. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
41 ayes, no nays on the adoption of the report.
Third confirmation report from Natural Resources has been adopted. Moving to the fourth report, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Natural Resources Committee would report favorably on Paul Strawman to the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission.
Senator Bossman.
Mr. President, members of the legislature, I present for your approval the appointment of Paul Stroman to Nebraska Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. He came before the committee on February 23rd. Mr. Schroman is seeking his first term on the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. Mr. Schroman was sought out by the board because of his experience and knowledge of ethanol industry and carbon sequestration. Since the introduction of LB 650 brought to the body by Senator Flood last year, the commission has been seeking out a member with vast knowledge of how to best utilize Nebraska's geological storage of carbon dioxide. He was asked to work with Nebraska Public Power in researching carbon sequestration and continues that work now on the commission. Mr. Schroman's knowledge and experience with oil and gas industry, combined with his recent work in CO2 sequestration, makes him an excellent nomination to the commission. The Oil and Gas Commission was founded in 1959. Its mission is to permit and develop of Nebraska's oil and natural gas resources up to the maximum efficient rate of production while promoting the health, safety, and environment of the residents of Nebraska. The commission consists of 3 members, all appointed by the governor. At least 1 member of the commission shall have had experience in the production of oil or gas and shall reside in the state of Nebraska for at least 1 year. And each of the members shall have resided in the state for at least 3 years. The committee voted to advance Mr. Schroman's appointment with 5 yeses, 1 no, or 1 nay, and 1 present not voting. I ask for your confirmation of Mr. Schroman to the Nebraska Oil and Gas Conservation.
Thank you, Senator Bossman. Any discussion on the report? I see none. Senator Bossman waives closing. Question for the body is the adoption of the 4th confirmation report from the Natural Resources Committee. Those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
40 yeas, no nays on the adoption of the report.
The 4th confirmation report has been adopted. Moving to the 5th and final confirmation report of natural resources. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, the Natural Resources Committee would report favorably on Dallin Julius to the Nebraska Oil and Conservation Commission.
Senator Bossman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the legislature, I present for your approval the reappointment of Dallin Julius to the Nebraska Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. He came before the committee on February 23rd. Mr. Julius is seeking his 2nd term on the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. He's serving the commission after spending his college summers in the oil fields in Wyoming and a long career in the oil and gas business, which included oil well maintenance, leasing and drilling operations, plugging and abandonment of production facilities, overseeing an oil field retail store and construction crew. Mr. Julius was promoted to president of ANB Casper in 2001. In 7 years, he grew the company from $8 million to assets of $7 million. During his time on the commission, Dallin Julius has helped the recovery of oil and natural gas within the state while protecting the environment. Mr. Julius is now retired and living with his wife in Lincoln. The committee voted the advancement of Mr. Julius' appointment with an 8-0 vote. There was no opposition to his reappointment, and I ask for the confirmation of Dallin Julius to the Nebraska Oil and Gas Conservation Commission.
Thanks, Senator Bossman. Discussion of the report. Senator Erdman.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning again. I rise in support of Mr. Julius. Mr. Julius is a cousin to a commissioner I served with in Bridgeport, Bill Julius. His family is well respected in that area. Mr. Julius is very much astute to what happens in the oil industry. We are fortunate to have people like this that are willing to stand up and volunteer their time for the Oil and Gas Commission board. That committee meets in Sidney, Nebraska. And up until a couple of years ago, Senator Hughes and I had gotten together and raised the per diem. It was $50 a year since 1954 until a couple of years ago. And we've now adjusted that per diem to $400 a day, which in $1950 probably wasn't quite enough. But they don't do it for the money. And I would ask you to vote green on Mr. Julius. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Erdman. Any further discussion? I see none. Senator Bossman waives closing. Question for the body is the adoption of the 5th and final confirmation report from the Natural Resources Committee. Those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. You all vote to carry to. Record, please.
41 ayes, no nays on the adoption of the report.
The fifth and final confirmation report from Natural Resources has been adopted. Members, we're going to move now to final reading pursuant to the rules. If you could all please be at your desks. Final reading, first bill, Mr. Clerk.
Congressional Bill 592, the Energy Best Internet 48, Bill for Enact the Automated Medication System, Amendment 712449, 712451, revised test Nebraska requires the use of automated medication distribution machines prescribed, change preventative emergency dose of prescription requirements, repeal the original section, be enacted by Section 1. 7117 awards an amendment on automated medication requirement 7447, if in long-term automated pharmacy, subject to 2451. So Section 712451 be used in hospital, long-term care facility, assisted living facility, medication administration pursuant to chart order prescription by a licensed healthcare professional. As took place on the several manufacturer packaging, they package same applies with certain law related repackaging. This is in the record keeping assuming now made by something to be clear by 717454, section 2712451. Ratio by statute Nebraska amendment 7177 to a long-term facility, pharmacy and catalog in the healthcare facility, licensed long-term professional licensed long-term care, something with the automated medication located in Minnesota, as soon as submit an application, license verification, the present public health and health and service, either by pharmacy license and renewal. The application should include the name of the licensed pharmacy, some automated medication system that a long-term facility required with certain local enforcement. Pharmacy charge the application of the federal government is required as a long-term pharmacy and division application, learned to something that is some pharmacy and licensed pharmacy. Part of the application process, the basic long-term automated pharmacy, and then the automated pharmacy is necessary. Division of license, something that automated medication system, something that one part of something that allows some pharmacy to care, automated pharmacy, the pharmacy, something that will be the open long-term care, automated pharmacy, identify pharmacy, the operation supervision, Mr. Long-Care Pharmacy, so the record keeping requirements, automated pharmacy act. Like about something in the section being released for the administration of reservation development of Boston, the experience of government technical substance. So these medical or reviewed by farmers prior to release the drug by May 7th, purchase of the last 7 to put something to list them down, mid license of something that the medicine of a long-term pharmacy facility. Supervision by a pharmacist sufficient to comply something that the pharmacist license something that was electronic keeps record of compliance that require 5 years. Each try to spend a long-term something in the following information in the automated pharmacy prescription the number something in the form of the drug beds and something that describe the dread date of filling. So if there's a direction for use of something there's medication that the living system code and it's a long-term care facility to sit in the long-term spend automated something long-term automated something that follow with regard to dispensing of drugs by something long-term care something including percentage of total prescription drug sales revenue 717454. Section 3 original section 712449 2451 revised statute Nebraska repealed.
All provisions of law relative to procedure have been complied with. The question is, shall LB 592 pass? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
Voting aye, Senator Aguilar, Albright, Arch, Bloodbow, Star, Boston, Brandt, Brewer, Breezy, Kavanaugh, Clemens, DeBoer, Dorn, Erdman, Flood, Friesen, Geist, Gregor, Halloran, Ben Hanson, Hilders, Hilton, Hughes, Hunt, Jacobson, Golderman, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Lynn, Anlow, McAllister, McDonald, McKinney, Moser, Merman, Pauls, Pansy, Brooks, Sanders, Sloman, Stenner, Vargas, Walls, Wayne, Williams, and Wishart. Voting nay, none, not voting, Senators Day, Matt Hanson, and Marfeld. Vote is 46 ayes, no nays, 3 excused, not voting.
LB 592 passes. Proceeding to LB 708, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, with respect to Legislative Bill 708, Senator Michaela Cavanaugh had filed a motion to bracket. However, I have a note that she wishes to withdraw.
Motion withdrawn.
In course of Bill 708, introduced by Hughes 44, Bill for enacting laws for 79477, limited code of regarding harmonized provision, repeal or section being enacted by Section 1. Section 19707, issued by Section 7 days by 7 days, attached to be sold and paid the Supreme Court, side President, Board of Legislative Council, price to be sufficient to recover all costs of publication and distribution. Supreme Court has for $1 per volume, any compilation or statute, and superseded by the official raising the compensation volume number. Supreme Court may dispose of unsold superseded volumes in a manner deemed proper. All money received by the Supreme Court shall be paid in the state treasury. The cost of publication shall be credited to the Nebraska Statute Fund, Nebraska Statute Distribution Cash Fund. Court shall take receipts of some money paid in the fund. Supplements are free and charged in the same manner as in the same parties designated in Section 49.617. Section 2, original Section 49.707, reissued by statute in Nebraska, is repealed.
All provisions of law relative to procedure having been complied with, the question is, shall LB 708 pass? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have y'all voted care to? Record, please.
Voting aye, Senator Aguilar, Albright, Arts, Blood, Bostar, Bostelman, Brandt, Brewer, Breezy, Kavanaugh, Clements, Dorn, Erdman, Flood, Friesen, Guys, Greger, Halloran, Ben Hanson, Hilgers, Hilkeman, Hughes, Hunt, Jacobson, Colderman, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linhan, Lowe, McAllister, McDonald, McKinney, Moser, Merman, Pauls, Pansy, Sanders, Salamas, Dinner, Vargas, Walls, Wayne, Williams, and Wishart. Voting nay, none. Not voting, Senators DeBoer, Day, Matt Hanson, and Marfeld. Vote is 45 ayes, no nays, one present, not voting, 3 excused, not voting. Mr. President.
LB 708 passes. Proceeding to LB 754.
Ingress Law Bill 754, introduced by vote start 29, the bill for inoculating schools. In Section 7910, revised at sub 2021, the Gerson Level Pilot Program, repeal the original section, be enacted by the Section 1. 7910, 1.03, 7910, 11003, set by new pilot because of the commercial effort in classroom and convoluted particular manner and the impact on academic behavioral performance. Then the legislative pilot program then be completed in Consolidated University of the 3 years and days of 22, 23, 23, 24. The positive 50% of the new school. This basic school will go to the pilot program. This is integrated between grade 3 through 8. No more than 50% of participants in the same school district will submit to be random in the Senate school group. But listen to the automatic report there's a clear education in the legislature. State Board of Education will adopt and promulgate rules and regulations to carry out this section. Section 2, original Section 79, 10, 110, 103, revised at supplement 2021 is repealed.
All provisions of law relative to procedure have been complied with. The question is, shall LB 754 pass? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
Voting aye, Senator Aguilar, Albright, Arts, Blood, Bostar, Bostelman, Brandt, Brewer, Breezy, John Kavanaugh, DeWard, Dorn, Flood, Friesen, Geis, Greger, Halloran, Ben Hanson, Hilgers, Hilkeman, Hughes, Hunt, Jacobson, Colderman, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linhan, McAllister, McDonald, McKinney, Moser, Merman, Penzibrooke, Sanders, Lamas, Dinner, Vargas, Walls, Wayne, Williams, and Wishart. Voting nay, Senators Clements, Erdman, Lowe. Not voting, Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, Pauls, Day, Matt Hanson, and Warfeld. Vote is 41 ayes, 3 nays, 2 present, not voting, 3 excused, not voting. Mr. President.
LB 754 passes. Proceeding to LB 758.
Ingress Law Bill 758, in American 32, by Farm School Program Act, 792 to 104, West at 721 to 5 to pass Farm School Program to harmonize provisions, repeal the original section, be enacted by the people of Section 1. 7929 to 70, the purpose of Farm School, and same meeting session 1101. Include program license, child care licensing act, food meeting act, commodity purpose, variety processed, marketed, and purchased for human consumption. Programs new farm school program established 792903, school means established for secondary school, elementary, president, non-public school, section 2, 792904. Be remembered as follows: 2904, this is the local and then local and regional farm economies. So like a child in the school in the state with farm manner provider child education programs, schools with fresh and minimum processed food inclusive in the business act and child education eating habits, improve the incomes of farmers who enjoy direct access to markets. Program will look at practical with hands-on farm visit, cooking demonstration, school gardening and composting programs, and integrated nutrition and education on the school curricula. Section 3, original section 7 and 9, 2902, 2904, revised stats up 2021 are repealed.
All provisions of law relative to procedure have been complied with. The question is, shall LB 758 pass? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Record, please.
Voting aye. Senator Aguilar, Albright, Archblood, Bostar, Boston, Brand, Brewer, Breezy, Kavanaugh, Clements, DeBoer, Dorn, Erdman, Flood, Friesen, Geis, Gregor, Halloran, Ben Hanson, Hilgers, Helkeman, Hughes, Hunt, Jacobson, Colderman, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linhan, Lowe, McAllister, McDonald, McKinney, Moser, Merman, Pauls, Pansy, Brooks, Sanders, Lamas, Tenner, Vargas, Walls, Wayne, Williams, and Wishart. Voting in none, not voting Senators Day, Matt Hanson, and Morfeld. Voted 46 days, no nays, 3 excused, not voting.
LB 758 passes. Last bill, LB 892.
Gross Bill 892, Henry Walsh 15, Bill from Real Estate and License Act, 71-885, Revised Statute, Nebraska 41-88504, 8513, Revised Act, Keep Sim 20, Retail and Light Person, Broker License Applications, in Real Regional Section. Being acted by the people of the state of Nebraska, Section 8502, something conducting business as a real estate broker, associate broker, something license broker, associate broker, state brand by something license 858504. Purpose of the section, real estate broker, something real estate in the market for sale, and something that will contract for real property and property, something that will subsidy requirements, service, real estate action on employment, limited liability company or corporation owner, unless and then subject to section 85 and 7 that says regular course of incident managed sale or dispossess property is something that makes it non-ship in the subdivision. Attorney in fact only attorney law in the performance of this such attorney law by something the concept stated like return rental property such property. And some conduct of some property that's required as public purpose. American says our opinion value any real estate interest in this opinion value of the real estate taxation. Any person who is something that is a person that is in fact any touch on class and this broker says that such broker which is sent by email something that look like a website for broker or salesperson. Something that is maybe not some the authority number of obligations that's presidential with this particular broker or salesperson that there is something that something that plays unless an system the contract is being made. For many activities, 788501, so those are the subsection. Next 38513, this has been license being issued in per not extended as the age of 19 years. No broker sales, the person not a graduate public or a polite person at graduate high school is the rest of our education. 791601 according to the code of the jurisdiction of the education commission. Each applicant the first time to be new say real estate either some 60 hours in condition to the year something to do this and of course about something that is delivered and launched that the commission is something that the broker 2 years of experience required in the subsection. And they have some furnished some of the past courses in the course study approved by the commission. Another course limited this education but by the commission. No person is a broker, some living person, some accounting, broker finance, by something that class and custom to 2 and 3B of this section. Each applicant broker some furnished averages from the corporate submitted by standards about some delivery brokers upon applicants written examination, some the issue of the license. Commissioner Burness from the last November, from the Federal Investigation, State Patrol, not filing application without license by commission, the session, full set of things from the criminal license, they will also submit to fingerprints, there's some extra cost to the fingerprinting, check on criminal history record information. They authorize the release of criminal history direct to the commission. Of course, the studies of the 4, 5 of the section 2, including driver participation, they can find the taught by instructed by the commission, so in the case as authors, driver, etc., instructors. all license submitted underneath the submitted with submitted granted submitted not limits in less contract to listening agreement the funding client funds submitted with submitted to the commission submitted section 85 section 4 original section 81 88502 revised statute Nebraska section 81 88504 81 88513 revised statute GUMSEP 2020 are repealed.
All provisions of law relative to procedure have been complied with. The question is, shall LB 892 pass? Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
Voting aye, Senators Aguilar, Albright, Arts, Blood, Boastar, Bostelman, Brandt, Brewer, Breezy, Kavanaugh, DeVore, Dorn, Flood, Friesen, Gregor, Ben Hanson, Hilders, Elkman, Hunt, Jacobson, Colderman, Lathrop, Lindstrom, Linehan, McAllister, McDonald, McKinney, Moser, Merman, Pauls, Bensbrook, Sanders, Dinner, Vargas, Walls, Wayne, Williams, and Wishart. Voting nay, Senator Clements, Erdman, Halloran, Lowe, and Sloman. Not voting, Senators Geist, Hughes, Day, Matt Hanson, and Marfeld. Vote is 39 nays, 5 nays, 2 present, not voting, 3 excused, not voting, Mr. President.
LB 892 passes. That will conclude final reading. We'll now move to general file consent calendar.
Mr. President, the first bill this morning on general file, Legislative Bill 91, offered by Senator Brandt. It's a bill for enacting the Nebraska seed law to define and redefine terms, change provision relating for seed relating to labeling, germination testing, tetrazoleum TZ testing, harmonize provision, repeal original sections. The bill was read on January 7th, 2021, referred to the Agriculture Committee. That committee reports the bill to general file with committee amendments attached.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Senator Branch recognized to open on LB 91.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. Good morning, colleagues. Today I bring you Legislative Bill 91, an act relating to Nebraska seed law, a bill over 2 years in the making. A version of this bill was introduced in 2020 and passed out of committee without opposition, but was not heard on the floor due to the interruption of COVID-19, so we brought it back last year. It has been on general file since the beginning of last session, awaiting to be heard on the floor, and was first up in worksheet order this session. As it does not look like we are going to get to worksheet order, I want to thank Speaker Hilders and his office for putting it on consent calendar. LB 91 is a bill to allow for a 12-month testing period for the germination of native seeds as opposed to the current 9-month period. It also allows tetrazoleum TZ testing in lieu of germination percentage testing in applicable cases. Dr. Kay Kotis, president of Prairie Legacy, brought me this bill because of the cost associated with these tests. Today, germination testing for native seeds is set at a 9-month interval. The frequency of testing becomes expensive for businesses, especially for smaller and specialty seed producers. Seed tests can range from $128 for native grasses to $175 for other species for each lot submitted. It is common to deal with 150 species each year and typically have 2 or 3 lots of each, so it can cost in the tens of thousands of dollars. The current way seeds are tested is to try and germinate them in a moist, wet environment for 2 to 6 weeks, depending on the species. By allowing TZ instead of germination testing, we can get results faster, within 2 days, and forego the added expense of germinating seed that has a long dormancy factor. This type of testing is already allowed on most grasses with dormancies and would now include forbs as well. Germination testing is not as imperative to native seeds as it is for crop-producing seeds, and often they have been found to be viable even after 3 years. To be clear, this bill does not affect any seed that is non-native, including corn and soybean seeds. The bill originally introduced in the Ag Committee called for a 15-month testing interval, but we worked with the Nebraska Seed Trade Association, who initially opposed the bill at the hearing, to compromise on a 12-month testing interval. This also addressed Senator concerns about rolling over into another planting season. It was subsequently voted out of committee unanimously. The Ag Committee has an amendment, including this change and others. I would like to thank the Nebraska Seed Trade Association and Dr. Kotis for working together on the amendments with my staff to move this bill forward. Senator Halloran will tell you more about the committee amendment. With that, I ask for your green vote on the amendment and the bill.
Thanks, Senator Brandt. Senator Halloran recognized and open on the committee amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. Colleagues, good morning. The committee amendment strikes the expansion of the definition of agricultural seeds contained in the original bill that is unnecessary and in conflict with the remainder of the existing definition. The amendment further clarifies the definitions of new terms for native and non-native plant species to mean species native to North America prior to European settlement. The revision adopts more commonly used terminology to refer to those species utilized in habitat restoration and to distinguish from crop and other types of seeds. As introduced, LB 91 amended a provision of the seed law that prescribes a requirement for seed germination or viability labeling disclosure for a list of native seeds grass species. The list currently includes yellow bluestem, which is not a native species and is considered invasive in many states designated non-noxious species. The bill, as introduced, would apply this section to all native plant species, but added yellow bluestem to be inclusive of seeds currently covered by the provision. The committee amendment strikes the inclusion of yellow bluestem. The primary change is in item 4 of AM 96. Current law requires that for agriculture and vegetable or flower seeds, that the seeds may not be sold more than 9 months after the date of germination testing to verify the germination claims on the label, except for 1, seeds which by rule and regulation of the department allows to be sold for up to 12 months without retesting, and 2, hermetically sealed seeds which may be sold for up to 36 months without retesting. LB 91 sets out a different rule for native seeds to allow the seed to be sold for up to 15 months from the date of germination or viability test date. LB 91 also adds the option of viability testing in lieu of germination testing for retesting hermetically sealed native seeds sold more than 36 months after the initial testing. The committee amendment reduces the period during which native seeds may be lawfully sold from the date of germination testing or viability testing from 15 months to 12 months. As introduced, LB 91 is also added an option for non-native agricultural seeds to utilize seed viability testing in lieu of germination testing for retesting required of hermetically sealed seeds sold more than 36 months after the initial germination test. The committee amendment strikes the viability testing option for non-native seeds. The committee amendment was drafted in consultation with the Nebraska Agribusiness Association, which appeared in opposition to the bill, and the Nebraska Seed Trade Association, which provided a letter for the record in opposition. The amendment would remove the opposition to the bill. The bill advanced as amended from the committee 8-0. I encourage your green light on LB 91 as amended by AM 96. Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant.
Thank you, Senator Halloran. Any discussion on LB 91 or the pending Agricultural Committee amendment? I see none. Senator Halloran recognized to close on the committee amendment. He waives closing. Question for the body, the adoption of AM 96, the committee amendment. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
41 ayes, no nays on the adoption of committee amendments.
Committee amendment's been adopted. Any further discussion, LB 91 as amended? I see none. Senator Brandt recognized to close. He waives closing. Question for the body, the advance of LB 91 to ENR initial. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. If you all voted care to. Record, please.
43 yeas, no nays on the motion to advance the bill.
LB 91 advances. We'll pause now for items for the record.
Thank you, Mr. President. Communication from the governor, legislative bill 906E was received in the governor's office on February 25th and delivered to the Secretary of State on February 28th. Committee on Health and Human Services reports legislative bill 1091 to general file with amendments and 856 to general file. In addition to that, 3 separate confirmation reports, all from Health and Human Services. New resolution LR 309 by Senator Merman. Would congratulate Grady Johnson for being designated the American Star Farmer. In addition, legislative resolution 308 offered by Senator McDonald would express appreciation to Nebraska's healthcare workers. And finally, a potential conflict of interest statement from Senator Wishart. That's all I have at this time. I do have an announcement that performance audit will meet under the south balcony at 11 o'clock. That's performance audit, 11 o'clock under the south balcony.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. One additional item. While the legislature is in session and capable of transacting business, I propose to sign and do hereby sign the following 5 legislative bills. LB 592, 708, 754, 758, and 892. Returning to consent calendar, LB 59. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, legislative bill 59 offered by Senator Stinner. It's a bill for enacting the Nebraska Tourism Commission to provide powers and duties regarding tourism promotional products, provide and change provision regarding revenue received by the commission, harmonize provisions and repeal the original sections. Bill was introduced on January 7, 2021, referred to the Government, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee. That committee report the bill to general file with no committee amendments.
Senator Stinney, recognized to open in LB 59.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the legislature, LB 59 authorizes Nebraska Tourism Commission to contract directly with retailers to sell tourism merchandise. Payments received by the commission for the sale of merchandising would be credited to the Nebraska Tourism Promotional Cash Fund. Currently, the commission sells merchandise through Grow Nebraska, History Nebraska stores across the state, and has plans to sell product through the game and parks. But current statutes do not allow the commission to sell wholesale to retailers. Due to a massive spike in demand for the commission's merchandise and subsequent interest expressed by retailers, LB 59 will be needed if the state is to build upon the commission's recent success in promoting Nebraska tourism as a destination. Back in 2019, I introduced LB 637, now enacted into law. LB 637 authorized the commission to make merchandise available for sale directly to the public. This was accomplished through Grow Nebraska and History Nebraska stores. At that time, we created the Nebraska Tourism Commission Promotional Cash Fund, which is being utilized by LB 59. My legislation from 2000 followed on the heels of the state's successful marketing campaign developed and approved by the commission to promote Nebraska as the ideal tourism destination. The state can expect to receive continuing momentum from the commission's marketing efforts. That's why LB 59 will further the mission, enabling LB 637 back in 2019. LB 59 is an essential tool for the commission to further growth in our tourism industry. Finally, I want to note that the bill was advanced on a 7-0 vote and no one testified in opposition. Thank you, colleagues, for your consideration. I urge your green vote on LB 59.
Thanks, Senator Stinner. Any discussion on the bill? I see none. Senator Stinner waives closing. Question from the body's advance of LB 59 to E&R initial. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted? Record, please.
43 yeas, no nays on the motion to advance the bill, Mr. President.
LB 59 advances. Next consent calendar bill, LB 75. Mr. Clerk?
Legislative Bill 75, offered by Senator Gregor. It's a bill for inoculating the county government, change provision related to discontinuance of township organizations in the county with the township library, change provision relating to the levying and collection tax for certain libraries, and to repeal original section. Bill was introduced on January 7th, referred to the General Affairs Committee. That committee placed the bill on general file with committee amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Senator Gregor, you're recognized to open on LB 75.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the legislature. LB 75 pertains to township libraries. First, I'll give you some background information on county government structure as either a commissioner form of government or a supervisor form. In 22 counties with supervisor form, separate townships make up the level of government below counties. Each township has a separate elected board and deals primarily with roads within the township. Some also have township libraries and cemeteries. Counties can change from one form to another, and within the last dozen years, 5 counties with the supervisor form of government have converted to commissioner counties. Kearney County's conversion to the commissioner form will take effective in 2023. One of the questions that has come up when the county boards and public are discussing what happens to the township if the form of government is discontinued is what happens to the township library. LB 75 would create some general guidelines to assure that the public has input on the future of the library if voters discontinue the township form of government. It would require that the county board hold a public hearing to determine whether the township library should be disposed of, merged with the city, village, or county library, or continue operation. Notice of the hearing shall be published in the newspaper of general circulation of the county for 2 consecutive weeks. The hearing would have to be held within 1 year after the voters approve the discontinuance. Within 60 days after the hearing, the board would have to adopt a resolution stating the disposition of the library and the effective date. I introduced LB 75 at the request of NACO. No one testified against LB 75 at the public hearing, and the General Affairs Committee voted to advance it as amended by the committee amendments on an 8-0 vote. No fiscal impact is anticipated. The committee amendments include language suggested by the Nebraska Library Association, inserting a requirement that the county board give notice to the public hearing to the Nebraska Library Commission and the regional library system in which the township library is located. This would make sure the entities are aware of the public hearing and allow them to offer comment if so desired. I urge your favorable vote on the committee amendments of AM 341 and a green vote on the advancement of LB 75. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Gregor. Senator Breezy, recognized to open the committee amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. Rise to introduce AM 341 to LB 75. AM 341 does 2 things. First, it adds language to the bill to require a county board to provide a notice of hearing to the Nebraska Library Commission and the regional library system when the county is going to hold a hearing to determine the outcome of a township library after the county has voted to discontinue townships within that county. Secondly, AM 341 strikes Section 2 of the bill, which was problematic because it proposed to freeze a tax levy to the amount levied on the date the vote was taken to pay for the continuation of the library within what was formerly the township's boundaries. After speaking with the Tax Equalization Commission, it was determined that this language should be removed from the bill. This amendment was advanced 8-0 and the bill was advanced 8-0, and I would appreciate your adoption of this amendment, AM 341. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Breezy. Debate is now open on LB 75 and the pending committee amendment. Senator Erdman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning again. Following up on a comment my friend Senator Wayne has made in the past, we're moving way too fast, way too fast. And so maybe we need to slow it down a little bit, whatever that means, okay? But I was wondering if Senator Greger would yield to a question.
Senator Gregor, yield please.
Absolutely.
Senator Greger, you may or may not know, but how many of these township libraries might there be?
I don't know the exact number of how many, but I would guess, if there's 22 commissioners form of government, then the other has a potential for township libraries with supervisor form of government.
Okay, because I've never heard of a township library. Maybe Senator Breezy would know. Would you, Senator Breezy, yield to a question?
Yes.
So how many is there? Do you know?
According to the Nebraska Library Commission, there are 19 libraries receiving township funding currently.
I see. So your bill is asked, maybe I could ask you this question too, Senator Breezy, if you continue. So what you're saying in your amendment is you want the Board of Commissioners that's going to be formed to make sure they have a notice and a hearing of transferring this library to who do you transfer it to?
It will be well, depending what you decide to do with the library. And I think Senator Greger can probably answer those questions, but they have different options. They can discontinue the township library or choose to continue it. But if they choose to continue it, it'll be the responsibility of the county to ensure that it is funded.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Let me take a little, go down a little rabbit trail here. We need to eliminate the township form of government in the state of Nebraska. That's where we need to go. And then we don't have to answer all these questions about what happens to the library. It's a waste of taxpayers' money. And sometime in some place or soon, someone needs to bring legislation to eliminate this form of government. It may have worked quite well back in the first part of the last century, but I don't believe it serves any particular purpose going forward. And so maybe NACO needs to bring a bill that eliminates townships. So I'll support this bill because I think we need to eliminate those, but I think there's a better way, and that's eliminating all the township forms of government. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Urban. Any further discussion? Senator Breezy recognizes close. He waives closing on the committee amendment. Those in favor of the committee amendment, AM 341, vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Have you all voted care too? Record, please.
41 ayes, no nays on the adoption of committee amendments.
AM 341 has been adopted. Any further discussion on LB 75 as amended? I see none. Senator Greger recognizes close. He waives closing. Question whether the body is the advance of LB 75 to E&R initial. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
45 ayes, no nays on the motion to advance the bill.
LB 75 advances. Next consent calendar bill, LB 705. Mr. Clerk.
Legislative Bill 705, introduced by Senator Williams. It's a bill for enacting the Barber Act to eliminate provisions relating to booth rental permits, change requirements for registration as a barber instructor or assistant barber instructor, harmonize provisions, repeal original sections, outright repeal section 71 to 1905. Bill was introduced on January 25th of this year, referred to the Health and Human Services Committee, placed on general file with committee amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Senator Williams recognized open on LB 705.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues, and welcome to LB 705. I'd first of all like to thank Speaker Hilgers for recognizing that this barber bill is a cut above most of the other bills that we're hearing today. This bill was heard in front of the HHS committee on the 21st of January. It was voted out unanimously. There was no opposition testimony, and it was sort of a hair-raising experience for the members of the committee. LB 705 is a straightforward bill relating to the Barber Act and was brought to me by the Board of Barber Examiners, the regulating entity overseeing barbers practicing in the state of Nebraska. I will comb through the details and hit a few of the highlights. The first change in the bill, and there are two, eliminates the requirement that barbers who rent a space in a shop have a booth permit. The booth permit requirement was enacted in 2009 to track barbers that rent booths or chairs in barber shops for inspection purposes. The board no longer tracks those barbers who rent booths and chairs, so the board has determined the permit is unnecessary and voted unanimously to request the legislature to eliminate that requirement, much like we eliminated the flat tops, except for state patrolmen. The second change in LB 705 deals with the requirement of becoming a registered barber instructor. A person can be eligible for registration as a barber instructor if 1, they have completed 18 college credit hours, 2, they have been actively practicing barber for 1 year immediately preceding application, and 3, they have served as a registered barber assistant for 1 year. LB 705 reduces the 1-year requirement to 9 months, mainly because the old rule just didn't cut it anymore. There is currently a shortage of barber examiners. The Barber Board voted to make this change. The board feels that 9 months is an adequate period of time for an assistant to work, and this just simply trims that amount. LB 705 was passed unanimously, as I mentioned. There is a committee amendment adding the E clause due to a timing issue with the booth permits. With that, I encourage your green vote on LB 705. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Williams. Committee amendment, Senator Arch.
Good morning, colleagues. AM 1653 to LB 705 simply adds an emergency clause to the bill. In the hearing, the committee heard testimony that the booth rental permits, which this bill eliminates, are scheduled to be renewed at the beginning of the fiscal year this summer. The committee therefore added the emergency clause to ensure that the booth rental permits would not need to be renewed if they would simply be eliminated when this law goes into effect. I encourage your green vote on both the amendment and the underlying bill. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Arch. Any discussion on the bill or the pending committee amendment? Senator Erdman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wonder if Senator Williams yield to a question.
Senator Williams, will you yield, please?
Absolutely.
Senator Williams, in your comments, I heard you say something about we want to trim this bill a little. Did you refer to that?
There is a provision in this bill that reduces the amount of time to be a barber assistant trainee for the instructor from 12 months to 9 months.
Okay.
So it trimmed that from 12 months to 9 months.
Okay, so what you're saying is you want to trim this bill or shave a little off. Would that be correct?
Shave a little off would be a great comment.
Senator
I'm
Clements.
sorry that I didn't think of that one.
Senator Clements is the one that thought of that. So just thank you.
Thank you, Senators Erdman and Williams. Any further discussion? I see none. Senator Arch, to close on the committee amendment. He waives closing. Question for the body is the adoption of the committee amendment. AM 1653. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted on the committee amendment? Record, please.
41 ayes, no nays on the adoption of committee amendments.
AM 1653 committee amendment has been adopted. Any further discussion on the bill as amended? I see none. Senator Williams, waives closing. Question for the body's advance of LB 705 to E&R initial. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted carried? Record, please.
43 yeas, no nays on the motion to advance the bill.
LB 705 advances. Next consent calendar bill, LB 1148. Mr. Clerk.
1148, introduced by Senator Friesen, is a bill for enacting the Motor Vehicle Industry Licensing Board, provide for the employment of a hearing officer and repeal the original sections. Bill was introduced on January 19th of this year, referred to the Committee on Transportation and Telecommunications. The committee placed the bill on general file with no committee amendments.
Senator Friesen recognized to open on LB 1148.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, last year and in 2020, the Motor Vehicle Industry Licensing Board found that it was prudent during the pandemic to utilize a hearing officer. That helped avoid the 10-person board from having to conduct multiple day hearings with large numbers of people in a hearing room, some who had to travel from out of state. The board wishes to continue utilizing a hearing officer when it makes sense, but has been advised by the Attorney General that it lacks the express statutory authority to utilize that hearing officer in this manner. This is all that LB 1148 does. It authorizes the board to use and retain a hearing officer. The hearing officer may conduct preliminary hearings on the board's behalf. The hearing officers will make recommendations to the full board. The board will be the entity that makes all the final decisions. I thank you for your attention. Would request that you support advancing LB 1148. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Friesen. Any discussion on LB 1148? I see none. Senator Friesen recognized to close. He waives closing. Question from the body is the advance of LB 1148 to E&R initial. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Record, please.
41 ayes, no nays on the motion to advance the bill, Mr. President.
LB 1148 advances. Next consent calendar bill, please.
Legislative Bill 971, offered by Senator McDonald, is a bill for enacting in public health and welfare to change the name of the Brain Injury Trust Fund Act to the Brain Injury Assistance Act, change provision of the Brain Injury Trust Fund, and change the name of the Brain Injury Trust Fund to the Brain Injury Assistance Program to harmonize provisions and repeal the original sections. Bill was introduced on January 11th of this year, referred to the Appropriations Committee. That committee placed the bill on general file with no committee amendments.
Senator McDonald, recognized to open LB 971.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I'd like to thank the Speaker for putting this on consent. Also for my colleagues on Appropriations Committee for voting this out 9-0. This is a cleanup bill. Legislative LB 971 was introduced to address a technical issue related to the passage and enactment of the Brain Injury Trust Fund Act in 2019. This bill is purely technical and was provided to me by the Legislative Fiscal Office to fix this oversight. Appropriations for this act are made directly from the Healthcare Cash Fund, so the separate fund known as the Brain Injury Trust Fund is not needed. Therefore, LB 971 proposes to eliminate the Brain Injury Trust Fund itself and rename these provisions accordingly to as the Brain Injury Assistance Act and the Brain Injury Assistance Program. The overall scope, practice, and amazing work that is being accomplished as a result of this original act and subsequent funding will not be affected by this legislation. LB 971 will address the funding process issue and will provide efficiency for the program and the Brain Injury Oversight Committee as a whole. There is no fiscal impact associated with this bill, and I would reiterate there are no changes to the purpose or the use of this fund. The bill is purely technical. I know some of you've received emails and it's had some, caused some problems with this bill, and we addressed those in appropriations. And we wanted to make sure that we were accurate, so we brought in our fiscal staff and discussed it a second time and made sure that this does not make any changes except it's a cleanup, it's clerical, and it basically changes it from Brain Injury Trust Fund to the idea of the Brain Injury Assistance Act. That's all this bill does. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator McDonald. Any discussion on the bill? Senator Clements.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of LB 971, and I have had several emails from people with Brain Injury Alliance or concerned about this bill. And we did ask fiscal office to clarify what we're doing here, and it's really a name change. It's not changing how the money is spent or taking money away from a program. In my opinion, it is just a technical change, and I ask you to support it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Clements. Any further discussion? I see none. Senator McDonald recognized to close. He waives closing. Question from the body is the advance of LB 971 to E&R initial. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted carried? 2? Record, please.
45 ayes, no nays on the motion to advance the bill.
LB 971 advances. Proceeding to LB 691.
Legislative Bill 691, offered by Senator Blood. It's a bill for enacting the Address Confidentiality Act to provide for enrollment eligibility on kidnapping survivors, to refine a term and repeal original sections. Bill was read for the first time on January 5th of this year, referred to the Government, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee. That committee placed the bill on general file with no committee amendments.
Senator Blood, recognized to open LB 691.
Thank you, Mr. President. Fellow senators, friends all, I bring forward LB 691 to add survivors of kidnapping to the eligibility requirements for the Address Confidentiality Program to create an extra layer of protection for these victims. The ACP enables state and local agencies to respond to requests for public records without disclosing the location of a victim of abuse, sexual assault, or stalking. I thank Speaker Hilgers for placing this on consent agenda. LB 691 is part of my work with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Address confidentiality programs empower survivors of certain violent and abuse crimes to rebuild their lives by shielding survivors' addresses from public records so that their abusers cannot use public resources to locate survivors and harass and harm them again. LB 691 provides that victims of kidnapping qualify as program participants under existing ACA. The purpose of the program is to provide victims of abuse, stalking, sex trafficking, and sexual assault with a substitute address that they can use when interacting with state and local agencies. The program also provides them with a new mailing address to ensure that their actual mailing address remains confidential and does not enter the public record. This program is critical in ensuring the safety of many victims. When victims and survivors move to a new address that is unknown to their abuser, the ACP ensures that they can fill out any necessary applications with government departments, register to vote, and receive mail without fear that their address will become searchable to the public. If eligible for the ACP in Nebraska, an individual must be a victim of abuse, sexual assault, trafficking, or stalking who fears for his or her safety, or a parent or guardian applying on behalf of a minor or incapacitated person, and a Nebraska resident who has recently relocated to a place unknown to his or her abuser or is planning to move in the future. Applications are made in person at one of the many designated victim assistance centers located across Nebraska. These designated centers also provide counseling and sheltering services to these victims. Friends, violating Nebraskan safety is something that we can never take lightly. I ask for your green vote to move LB 691 forward. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Blood. Any discussion on the bill? I see none. Senator Blood, recognized closed. Your ways closing. Question for the body is advanced. Bill was 691. To be in our initial. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
42 ayes, no nays on the motion to advance the bill.
LB 691 advances. Next consent calendar bill, LB 1178. Mr. Clerk.
Legislative Bill 1178, introduced by Senator McCollister. It's a bill for enacting county records to provide for withholding the residential address of a judge from the public to define a term and repeal original sections. Bill was introduced on January 19th, referred to the Government, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee. That committee placed the bill on general file with no committee amendments.
Senator McCollister, you recognized to open LB 1178.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. Please don't judge me on the quality on this opening, if you would. I should mention that this bill came through the Government Committee and was unanimous, a unanimous vote of the committee. Good morning, colleagues, and thank you, Mr. President. LB 1178 makes one simple change to existing Nebraska law by adding judges to the list of persons who might request county officials to refrain from publishing their home addresses online. The Nebraska Legislature overwhelmingly supported a bill in 2017 that allowed law enforcement officials to make such a request. Statistics suggest that incidents where individuals attack or threaten presiding officers of the American justice system are increasing. According to a report by NPR, the U.S. Marshals Service has confirmed that 4 federal judges have been killed since 2079. I'm sorry, that's 1979. The U.S. Marshals also note that the number of threats is skyrocketing, with less than 1,000 threats being made in 2015 to nearly 4,500 threats and inappropriate communications being tracked in 2019 alone. Under the bill, judges would be allowed to request that their home addresses be withheld from official online records. A person requesting the home address of a judge whose address is withheld could still obtain the address, but it would need to they would need to place a request for the information in writing. Although practicality, this does not prohibit the public from access to a judge's public information, the cooling off period afforded when an individual submits a written request and appears in person to provide a critical moment for them to rethink their intentions and consequences of their intended actions. Furthermore, it ensures that the record is kept of who might be seeking this information in the unfortunate event an incident occurs. LB 1178 is a common sense bill. It provides an important layer of protection for the men and women who make our justice system work and who work to ensure the general public is safe. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator McCollister. Any discussion of the bill? I see none. Senator McCollister waives closing. Question for the body is the advancement. LB 1178 in our initial. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care too? Record, please.
39 ayes, no nays on the motion to advance the bill.
LB 1178 advances. Item for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. The bills that were read on final reading this morning were presented to the governor at 11 o'clock a.m. Have a confirmation report from the Agriculture Committee. Amendment to be printed to Legislative Bill 750 from Senator Friesen. Your Committee on Revenue reports Legislative Bill 850 and 917 is placed on general file, and 951 and 1272 is indefinitely postponed. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Clerk. Members, we're now moving to select file, which will require voice votes. Please be attentive to voice votes. LB 847, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, with respect to LB 847, I do have E&R amendments.
Senator McKinney for motion on the E&R amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. I move to adopt the E&R amendments to LB 847.
Members, you heard the motion to adopt the E&R amendments. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The E&R amendments are adopted. Mr. Clerk.
Nothing further on the bill.
Senator McKinney.
Mr. Lieutenant Governor, I move to advance LB 847 to E&R for engrossing.
Members, you heard the motion to advance the bill to E&R for engrossing. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. LB 847 advances. LB 567, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, on 567, I do have E&R amendments.
Senator McKinney.
Mr. President, I move to adopt the E&R amendments to LB 567.
The motion is to adopt the E&R amendments. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The E&R amendments are adopted. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Senator Ben Hansen would move to amend with AM 1958.
Senator Ben Hansen, recognized to open on AM 1958.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. This is pretty much just cleanup language on LB 567. During the floor debate, Senator Wayne pointed out the bill is retroactive going back to October of 2021. The Nebraska Department of Labor has been acting under a state executive order since April 30th of 2020. There is no need for the legislation to be retroactive, as this has been the process since 2020. The October 2021 date was because the bill was originally introduced in January of 2021. This amendment just clarifies so there's no confusion as to what the applicable law was at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ben Hansen. Any discussion on Senator Hansen's amendment, AM 1958? I see none. Senator Hansen recognizes closing the amendment. He waives closing. Question for the body is the adoption of AM 1958. Those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted care to? Record, please.
Thirty-seven ayes, no nays on the adoption of the amendment.
AM 1958 has been adopted. Mr. Clerk.
Nothing further, Mr. President.
Senator McKinney.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 567 to E&R for engrossing.
Members, you heard the motion to advance the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. LB 567 advances.
Mr. President, next bill, 749, no E&R amendments.
Senator McKinney.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 749 to E&R for engrossing.
Motion is to advance LB 749 to E&R for engrossing. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. LB 749 advances. Before proceeding, Senator Erdman would like us to recognize a friend of his, Don Lease from Banner County. Mr. Lease is with us in the North Balcony. Mr. Lease, if you could please rise, I'd like to welcome you to the Nebraska Legislature. LB 704, Mr. Clerk.
Legislative Bill 704 does have E&R amendments.
Senator McKinney.
Mr. President, I move to adopt the E&R amendments to LB 704.
Motion is to adopt the E&R amendments. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The ENR amendments are adopted. Mr. Clerk.
Nothing further on the bill, Mr. President.
Senator McKinney.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 704 to ENR for engrossing.
The motion is to advance the bill to ENR for engrossing. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. LB 704 advances. Proceeding to LB 786. Mr. Clerk.
Legislative Bill 786 has no ENR amendments.
Senator McKinney.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 786 to ENR for engrossing.
The motion is to advance the bill to ENR for engrossing. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. LB 786 advances. Final bill on select files, LB 791. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, on 791, there are no ENR amendments.
Senator McKinney.
Mr. President, I move to advance LB 791 to ENR for engrossing.
Motion is to advance the bill to ENR for engrossing. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. LB 791 advances. That will conclude select file consent calendar. Moving to general file 2022 committee priority bills, LB 1236. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Legislative Bill 1236, offered by Senator Lowe. It's a bill for enacting the Nebraska Liquor Control Act to change provision relating to the rights of a craft brewery licensee and repeal original sections. The bill was introduced on January 20th of this year, referred to the General Affairs Committee, placed on general file. There are committee amendments.
Senator Lowe, you recognized to open on LB 1236.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. I'm happy today to introduce LB 1236, which is this year's vehicle for the General Affairs Liquor Omnibus Bill. This package is made up of several pieces of legislation. I plan on talking about this bill, but also, well, I'll just talk about this bill and I'll let Senator Breese talk about the other pieces of legislation. The language we have in this amendment, or this is the most important piece of legislation we have this year as far as liquor. Deals in the past with small breweries and distributors. That's the struggle to find a distributor prevents growth that can even lead to brewery going out of business. Allowing a small craft brewery to grow is important for these businesses and for the communities around our state. The concept of limited self-distribution is obviously supported by the craft breweries, but what is more interesting is that this year, the Associated Beverage Distributors of Nebraska also came out in support of limited self-distribution. This is an unprecedented stance for these businesses to take. While there was an agreement on the concept, there was, of course, disagreement on the substance of the idea. That is why I brought two bills. The first, LB 1235, was narrowly written, while LB 1236 was far more wide open. Senator Breese allowed for these bills to be heard in a joint hearing that lasted 3 hours. It was a very refreshing and enlightening conversation that allowed the committee to come up with a combined piece of legislation that brought in elements of both 1235 and 1236. That combined language is now seen in AM 1986. All craft breweries in Nebraska would be allowed to self-distribute up to 250 barrels in a given year. There are restrictions in place, however, on these craft breweries. First, as I already mentioned, they would only be allowed to self-distribute 250 barrels of beer. Craft brewery can only distribute beer that they produce themselves. Craft brewery could only self-distribute in a vehicle that is licensed by the owners and that they could only use employees of the brewery to do so. They are further prevented from self-distributing their own brewery in a territory in which they have agreed to contract with a distributor to deliver the beer. I want to take a moment to explain this process a little bit. Currently, a craft brewery can only sell their product at their own locations, or they can sign contracts with the beer distributors. A contract would be done with distributor A for Kearney, let's make that as an example, distributor B for Omaha, and distributor C for Lincoln. They do not have to contract with a distributor for Norfolk, or the craft brewery cannot sell their beer in Norfolk.
The way LB 1236 will work in this scenario is that the brewery could not self-distribute in Kearney, Omaha, or Lincoln because they have a contract with a distributor there. But since they do not have a contract for Norfolk, they can deliver their beer there. I also want to add a little more information here so everyone can have a little more clear understanding. First of all, I want to clarify what a barrel of beer is. One barrel is 2 kegs. In terms of cans, 1 barrel equals roughly 330 12-ounce bottles or cans of beer. This means a brewery with this bill could self-distribute roughly 82,500 12-ounce bottles of beer or cans. There are 68 craft breweries currently operating in Nebraska. 34 of the 68 craft breweries in Nebraska produce less than 250 barrels of beer, meaning half of the breweries currently in Nebraska will have the option to completely self-distribute if we pass this bill. This is a game changer for these small breweries and will give them ample opportunities to grow. But we also need to remember that most breweries sell most of their beer inside their own tap rooms. That means most breweries distribute significantly less than what they produce. In fact, 50 out of the 68 breweries currently distribute less than 250 barrels. The language that for this amendment took hours of negotiation, and with all that side up, times that they would have preferred to seen in this bill. AM 1986 is truly a compromise. I've passed out 2 pieces of information. The first that was highlighted in green, I also passed these out on Friday. I passed them out again because we had a weekend in between. The first one with the asterisk that is in green, below that is it's been sorted by the barrels produced by the industry. And the second one that was not highlighted, but the star above barrels of sales by wholesalers. That one is sorted in that category. So in the first one that is highlighted in green, underneath Tom Brewer, it's been highlighted on the second page. All of those breweries underneath that produce less than 250 barrels. This will immensely help those brewers completely. They could double in size if they self-distribute. Now, on the second one that is not highlighted, you will see I highlighted Patty Pansing Brooks. I did not do that because she's a friend. I did it because after Patty Pansing Brooks, all of those microbreweries, they distribute less than 250 barrels of beer through distributors. So as you can see, most of the microbreweries don't distribute that much beer already today. So all of those little microbreweries could double their size of distribution. That would be huge for a small business, huge. And above that, that will help. That will get them into markets that they're not already in to prove to the distributors to carry their beer. So this is a small business bill that will help promote all of the microbreweries in Nebraska. And I think I did a count, and 26 senators have tasting rooms or microbreweries in their districts. That's amazing. We need to work on the other 16. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor.
Thanks, Senator Lowe. Senator Breeze, you recognize to open the committee amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning again, colleagues. I rise to introduce AM 1986 to LB 1236. First, I want to thank Senator Lowe for the enormous amount of hours he put in on this legislation and the amount of compromise that he worked towards to get this done, and appreciate everything he's done in this regard. AM 1986 generally does 3 things. First, LB 1236 was amended by AM 1850, which replaced the green copy of LB 1236. And Senator Lowe pretty much described what this first part entails. It essentially allows the holder of a craft brewery license to directly sell for resale up to 250 barrels of only their own manufactured craft beer per calendar year. If the licensee only distributes that beer in a territory, self-distributes that beer in a territory in which the craft brewer does not have a distribution agreement with a licensed wholesaler. And there are some more details there, but Senator Lowe explained most of them very well. Second, AM 1986 amends LB 899 into LB 1236. LB 899 is a bill that Senator Lowe introduced to create a new special designated liquor license, or SDL, which can be used by nonprofit corporations exempted from paying federal income taxes. These nonprofits can apply for up to 6 special designated licenses for a calendar year with one application, provided each event the licenses are needed for will all be at the same location. This lowers the cost required to obtain the 6 licenses from $40 per license to $40 for the initial license and $10 for each subsequent license listed on the application. There was only one testifier opposed to that bill. Third, AM 1986 amends LB 900 into LB 1236. LB 900 was another Senator Lowe bill. This is a bill to allow micro distilleries in Nebraska to have up to 5 separate physical locations under their license. Currently, craft breweries are allowed up to 5 locations where they can sell their own products. This allows the micro distillery to produce up to 100,000 gallons in the aggregate between all 5 locations. The combination of these bills reflected in AM 1986 really is a combination of legislation that can help some of our small businesses prosper going forward. It can be very beneficial. It will be very beneficial to our craft brewers. And all of us, or many of us, have craft brewers in our districts, and we all know the importance of the craft brewers to our local economies. And this is great legislation on their behalf. Also great legislation on behalf of the micro distilleries, and lowering the costs for nonprofits to attain SDLs is, again, an admirable goal. So I'd like to thank Senator Lowe for bringing these bills for us, and very happy to have them as the components of our one committee priority bill. And I'd ask for your support of AM 1986. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Breezy. Debate is now open on LB 1236 and the pending committee amendments. Senator Flood.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I'd like to start by just complimenting both Senator Lowe and Senator Breezy for working through this. This is one of those issues that I have been contacted by business folks in my district. Craft beer and everything that surrounds it has become very popular. And as you can see on this list, Divots Brewery is listed prominently, and I know they will be so pleased to know that we've worked through one of the more difficult issues when it comes to putting all the different pieces on the same page. And so I really want to commend Senator Lowe for his leadership here, because this is actually going the right direction. I do want to ask Senator Lowe a question.
I'm sorry, Senator Flood.
I'd like to ask Senator Lowe a question.
Senator Lowe, would you yield, please?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Lowe, obviously we're dealing with breweries here, and this has been a lot of work. Can you talk for just a second about how you brought the groups together? And then I want to talk to you about distilleries.
This has been a project now for several years of trying to get these groups together, the craft brewers, the distributors, and the liquor commission, so they all agree on this. And normally it comes down to a nice meeting and then ends up with knives and forks, not pointed at the plate, but at each other. But this year, we all came together. It may have been because the 2 bills were brought. It may have been because we're just tired of fighting. Who knows what it is, but this year, all 3 came together in this amendment.
Well, I would add this. I don't think any of us realize how much, how good this is, because this is settling a dispute that has been very right for some time. I'd like to just add this and not make any changes with this bill, but I have distillery coming in Norfolk, into downtown Norfolk, and they're asking me about this. They're asking me about everything that you've gone through on the brewery side. And I'd like to know, has there been a discussion about distilleries, and is that something we can work on in the future to maybe even mirror some of what we're talking about here?
That's why I did not include distilleries in it this year, was I wanted to see how well this was going to go through, because we are tipping the three-tier system here, but still keeping it mostly intact. But I want to take it small steps at a time, and I'm sure in the future we will take a look at distilleries.
Well, thank you, Senator Lowe, and thank you very much for your work on this. I'm excited that this has come to fruition, that all three sides are on the same page, that we have progress in what is really actually a very difficult and complicated issue. I would like to just signal that distilleries are on the horizon, and I think Senator Lowe's taken a responsible approach. Let's take this step today, and let's take a look at how it works and have future discussions about where we can go with distilleries, because I think you're going to start seeing more of those across the great state of Nebraska. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Flood. Senator Hilkeman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. President, I'd like to know if Senator Lowe would take a question for me, please.
Senator Lowe, you, please.
Yes.
Yes. Senator Lowe, I looked at your bill here, and I noted that you had 10 people who spoke as proponents for the bill. You had 8 people speak in opposition, and it's 1 person in a neutral position. Could you tell me could you summarize for me what the opponents' arguments were on this bill?
For the most part, the opponents of this bill were the proponents for 1235, the opposing bill. And so that's why I brought the 2 bills, was to get both views of where we were going to be as we bring the 2 bills together. And for the most part, all the opponents, except for one, is in favor of this new amendment that we're bringing. The one that probably will not be in favor of it will be Project Extra Mile. But the rest of them, their fears were relieved with the amendment that we're bringing.
So you would say that if the amendment had been the bill, that we would probably may have only had Project Extra Mile that would have been opposed to it? Okay. Why would Project Extra Mile oppose this?
They are in opposition of any advancement in alcohol.
Tell me more about what you mean by advancement of alcohol.
Well, any time it makes it easier for a beverage or something to gain a foothold, they come in opposition.
In other words, that they're opposed to how easy it is to procure alcohol. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so with the result of passing this legislation, do you think that this is another procurement issue that we should be concerned about? Are we going to have more persons, more accesses, possibly more people driving under the influence with this bill?
Not with this bill, but I just think they didn't like the idea of self-distribution of some of the things because it's just bringing more product into the places that will be selling it.
Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor.
Thanks, Senator Hilkeman and Senator Lowe. Any further discussion? Senator Breeze, you recognize the close on the committee amendment.
Yes, just very briefly, I think this is a great amendment. It's pro-business, pro-small business, and it's going to help us grow our communities across the state, going to help us grow Nebraska going forward. Again, I thank Senator Lowe for his work on this. I'd urge your support of the amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator Breezy. Question for the body. the adoption of AM 1986 committee amendment. Those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Have you all voted carried too? Record, please.
Forty-two ayes, no nays on the adoption of committee amendments.
AM 1986 has been adopted. Any further discussion on the bill as amended? I see none. Senator Lowe, you recognize to close.
I would like to thank everybody for the votes on the amendment and to vote green on the bill. And there's no better time to end this bill than right before lunch.
Thank you, Senator Lowe. Question for the body is the advance of LB 1236 to our initial. Those in favor, vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Have you all voted carried too? Record, please.
39 ayes, no nays on the motion to advance the bill.
LB 1236 advances. Item for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Enrollment and Review reports Legislative Bill 717, 1037, 848, and 767A, all to select file. New resolution LR 310 offered by Senator Lindstrom that will be laid over. Name heads Senator Aguilar to 773, Senator Jacobson to 783, Senator John Kavanaugh to 921, Senator Matt Hansen 1173, Senator Blood 1241, Senator Bostar 1241, Senator Manhansen to LR 305. Some announcements. General Affairs will hold an executive session following their hearing today in room 1510. Education will hold an executive session following their hearings in room 1525. And Transportation will hold an executive session today in 1113 at 1:30 p.m. Finally, Senator McAllister would move to adjourn until Tuesday, March 1, 2022 at 9:00 a.m.
Members, you heard the motion to adjourn until tomorrow at 9 a.m. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. We are adjourned.